Hello. So now we are going to study together the bishop g5 line. Definitely one of the most dangerous lines, very sharp for the players who want to play Najdorf with black. I will disappoint you from the very beginning. Here you will have to learn quite a number of forced variations, like it or not. But if you want to face bishop g5 and to get out with a good position, get out of the opening, you have no other choice than to study, to memorize quite a few lines. But in general, I think black is doing well here. It's only that you need to remember exactly the move orders. You need quite a number of nuances with move orders. And here in this variation, more than in any other variation in Najdorf, one inaccuracy in the opening can cost you a lot. Because White's play is very straightforward. He's playing for development, for very quick attack very often, and you cannot play from the general ground, so to say, with black. So at least at the beginning. Then of course, then quite often it gets to a complicated playable position. Then you play. But in order not to lose out of the opening, better study it, better listen carefully to this lesson and try to memorize. So for the white players, also bad news for you. Actually, it's black who is choosing systems here. So white has to remember much more than black if you want to play with bishop g5 the system. And probably objectively black is fine in more than one way, but it's very, very dangerous system for black. So, there is a chance just to crush your opponent out of the opening, especially if he's not extremely well prepared. The positions are extremely sharp, at times very, very forcing, at times just so crazily complicated that it's difficult to assess the position. So, all in all, very exciting system. Maybe not that much on the top level, because on the top grandmaster level, it's pretty much about who has a more powerful engine and who has a better memory. So basically, this player will prevail most often, not necessarily the one who is a better chess player. But of course, on the lower levels, when the knowledge is not so profound of players, then there is a big room for ideas, big room for opening victories with either color. So you can easily get much better with white, also much worse if you confuse something. So all in all, let's go. Let's try in this limited amount of time. I will try to give you the main directions, the main which systems are playable, which are not really. But if you want to, of course, if you are playing on the serious level or club level, classical chess especially, you better learn a bit more. Check games and so on, because it's, again, only this one system can, you can record a special course on this bishop g5 line. So I will try to help you to navigate into this tons of theory, thousands of games, and not to lose time, and also to give you certain ideas maybe to try with both colors. So bishop g5, e6 of course is the main move, but actually knight bd7 is a very playable system, which is played by many strong players. Alexander Grishuk is playing it pretty often. Lenier Dominguez and other strong players. So there is no refutation, at least not found yet, but it's a bit risky. Usually I think the black players are using this system when they want to get a game, when they don't want the opponent to give a chance to make a forced draw. Yeah, and so that is actually I don't know any really forced draw here for white. So at least after knight bd7, because in most of other lines, black has a choice whether to play a very dubious line where he can easily get worse, whether white has a chance to force a draw. So knight bd7 is a really move to play for a win. The positions are quite, very risky for black, but engines don't find refutations. There was a lot of games, so you can play it. Yeah, you can. I have objectively my doubts. It's totally sound, but playable definitely. So here, what are the choices for white? f4, which is by far the main move after e6. Here it's already not completely precise, because I think black has a choice, but queen c7, I believe, is black's idea. So of course, the whole point of playing bishop g5 is to try to play long castle. So that's why I will not even consider all kind of ideas when white, let's say, plays bishop e2, short castle. It doesn't fit together with bishop g5. So that's why after queen c7, white has two reasonable moves. Logical moves is queen f3 and queen e2. Also, another important point that in comparison with the Rouser variation, where white usually plays queen d2, in this line, bishop g5 against Najdorf, queen very rarely ends up on d2. Usually it goes on e2 or f3. So here, actually queen e2, now the problem is, I will explain later, because black can play e6 and that will transpose to the very serious line. So if white wants to just transpose to this line, then bad news. Here it doesn't really work so well, because e5 is already good. And that is why knight bd7 is played before e6, because here queen e2, e5, and let's say knight f5, h6, black has no problem whatsoever, even maybe more promising position. So queen e2 is not the best, then queen f3. But here already black can first of all play e6, which will transpose to knight bd7 variation, which is we are going to consider at the end of this lesson. But there, according to the actual state of theory, actually the variation queen e2 is the most dangerous. Queen f3 is not. It seems that black is doing fine in queen f3. So like this, first of all, black can already transpose to the line having the queen on f3, avoiding queen e2 variation. And secondly, black also has quite an interesting way to play h6. Here still with a pawn on e7. Now, I don't know, engine, let's say, takes on f6, plays f5 and pretends that it's maybe interesting. I don't really like it. Bishop d7. I don't think black should have any serious problems here. So bishop h4 is the main move, and now e5. Again, the same idea. Here it's already not so easy after e5 to equalize, but still maybe enough, because now it's pretty direct play. Knight takes, using the fact that queen is on f3 attacking it. Queen f2, bishop e7, and in order to fight for something, white should do this: bishop f6, knight d5, queen a5 check, important to create the weakness, queen d8, and obviously white has to take on f6, takes, exchanging queens. Well, it's maybe a bit nominally better for white this endgame, because black has, of course, quite a bad pawn structure, but at the same time, of course, if white pawn would be on b2, that would be quite pleasant for white. With a pawn on b4, the c pawn can be weak. Also, black has a5 ideas sometimes, and the knight on e5 is very powerful. So black will get king on e7, probably bishop on e6. With such a strong knight, I don't believe white has any realistic chances to fight for a win here. So actually f4 is probably not the best move order. Very interesting is bishop c4, very dangerous line. Actually, this is a important option for white, which doesn't exist after e6. So knight bd7 gives this chance of playing bishop c4, because now in case of h6, for instance, white simply takes, plays queen e2, and it's black taking the bishop. Usually, well, normally it's good for black, but he lost quite some tempis, and here there was a lot of games, and it seems that black's position is very dangerous. I mean, the problem is that he will sooner than later play e6, and white just starts to play long castle f4, f5 very quickly. And it seems that black is not in time to find an adequate reaction against it, so white is better here according to theory. So then in e6 is more playable here, but still after queen e2 the same type of play, very dangerous for black. Very dangerous, I think considers to be in favor of white, this position. So after bishop c4, the best move is queen b6. Of course, you need to know quite some theory here. You need to memorize it, because, of course, you need to be brave, because the position is quite dangerous. White is already developed. Black is just starting to develop. But again, as quite often in this bishop g5 line, risky looking position, but you cannot really find an advantage for white. So after queen b6, well, there are two main moves. One is castle. Here, queen c5 is the most solid and safe way of playing, relatively safe. But actually, queen takes b2 is also not refuted. I mean, it doesn't look good. I think that in the childhood, when I just started to learn chess, I mean, my first trainer would not be happy if I would have been playing like this, not developing my pieces, taking this unimportant b2 pawn with king in the center. But, well, as strange as it might seem, there is no refutation, at least according to theory. For instance, this line is e6, and black seems to be equalizing here also. But queen c5 is safer, because now the two bishops are under attack. Bishop d5 is played, e6, rook e1, main move, and knight e5. And yes, of course, with the help of a prayer, black will manage finally to finish his development, and that is what was happening in games. And there was quite a number of games played in this position. Black would finish his development and actually equalize. Then the other move is bishop b3. Also, yeah, the main line, I would say, e6 now. And I just noticed lately, for some reason, a4 started to be relatively popular. I don't really like this move. I don't know. A bit looks strange to me, but has to be checked. But normally white is trying to play queen d2, just trying to make long castle, knight c5, f3, bishop e7, let's say long castle, queen c7, g4, b5, and so on. And here the series still goes on and on. Extremely sharp position. So black is trying to push bishop d7 before a5. White is trying, of course, to push his pawns on the king side. I have analyzed it a lot at some point when I was still playing chess. I couldn't find an advantage for white, but it's a position to study. If you want to play knight bd7 with black, then after bishop c4 probably it's best you can have. And but I believe it's okay for black. I couldn't find an advantage here. So but then the most popular move is queen e2, especially for players who want to play the system e6, the e6 system with a knight bd7 with queen on e2. What I mean is that after e6, f4, knight bd7 is one of the major systems, and now the most dangerous move is queen e2. So if you want to play like this with white, then makes a lot of sense to play knight bd7, queen e2. But black has a way to keep his pawn on e7 for the time being, playing h6. Here already bishop f6 is not that dangerous because, well, bishop on c4 is a totally different story. Still, long castle, still black has to know, because he still has to develop. I think the best is e5, and black is doing fine here. According to theory, there was a very interesting game, Nakamura-Gopal. In 2017, it went like this: knight f5, g6, knight e3. Well, at least the knight is getting to d5, but queen on e2 is not very well placed. Bishop e6, g3, rook c8. Now there was a game, Grishuk won a game, his opponent played rook d3, and then he went h5, bishop h6. By the way, a little bit reminds this position, this variation which we have just checked after h3, e5, knight e2, h5, bishop g5. Quite a similar type of position. Black is fine here also. So Nakamura played knight d5, takes, rook c5, and now he went b4 because black is threatening to take on d5. And if you, in this particular situation, if you will take with a pawn on d5, black will develop his bishop and will have a very good position. So Nakamura went b4 just to keep the control on the d5 square. I don't know if white is better if black rook retreats, but I think it was a very interesting exchange sacrifice in the game. Takes, bishop d7, then bishop g7 castle, and of course black has quite some compensation here with this black squares and the weak king on c1. The game ended in a draw, but anyways, after h6, bishop h4 is supposed to be the main move. And now g6, a little strange, of course, way of playing. So white has two rather different ideas. One is to play long castle. Black usually plays e5, knight b3, and then trying to have a slow game. Let's say bishop e7, white plays at some point f3, and it's a complicated strategical game, typical for Najdorf. Rather unclear, hard to say if white, but in general quite acceptable for black, especially since, again, usually knight bd7 is played in order to avoid some forced lines, to avoid forced draws, and to get a complicated game where you can outplay your opponent. So here black got what he wanted. So f4 is more challenging. E5 is coming, so e5, fe, d, long castle. You can do this because ed4 is, I think, just bad because of e5. So long castle, queen c7 is played, knight b3 and b5. Frankly, it doesn't look great, this position for black, because it's d5 square. Imagine the knight gets to d5 at some point and cannot be exchanged. Also, white has a very big, actually, advantage in development, but it's not so easy for white. There are many games of strong players. Again, I also analyzed this position. I was not sure couldn't really also find anything very clear for white. For example, knight d5 is very direct move, but takes bishop d6. This position seems to be very unclear. I'm not sure who is better. Well, objectively, just complicated and unclear, but I'm not sure which side I would take here, because black has his trumps also. Then there is a rook takes d7, very interesting exchange sacrifice, knight d7, knight d5, and then queen retreats, usually to b8, knight a5, and also, you need some good machine here to analyze this position. I think it ends in a draw. It finally ends in a draw, but very sharp and complicated. Queen can also go to d6. I think still knight a5 is played. So very, very sharp game. The variation actually is extremely interesting, to play, but the only problem is that if you start to analyze it with engine, it spoils the fun a little bit, because if there were no engine, just go and play this position. It's from both sides absolutely playable, interesting. Now it's more pretty much who will analyze it deeper and whose engine is more powerful. So, but it seems that here this position leads to a more or less forced draw. If you analyze it a lot. But if, with white, I think also with black, but especially with white, if you think that your opponent doesn't know it and you analyzed, I think the chance is quite serious that you will win the game. But otherwise, normally the main move is queen f3, bishop g7, and then white is trying to play g4 at some point, bishop d3, king b1. Well, here I would stop because the series still goes on and on, but now it's becoming less direct, it's more positional. White has chances for advantage, but the game is complicated and quite double-edged, I would say. So black can also get better potentially here. So an interesting variation, knight bd7, you need, as well, unfortunately, as in other lines, you need to know quite a lot here, but not refute it yet and still play it on the top level from time to time. So then, but the main move is of course e6. Now white has to play f4 if he wants something out of the opening, because this, why not queen d2, just h6? So this is a big difference. With a knight on c6, it was not working because of bishop f6, knight b5. If you remember, d6 pawn was falling. Here h6, white cannot keep his bishop anymore, because if bishop e3, knight g4, and here in this version, if black just exchanges bishop, he has a very good game. And after bishop h4, there is knight e4, simply working. Yeah, tactics, small tactics. Bishop d8, knight d2, and it's not good for white. So queen d2 is a mistake, because after h6, probably the best is to take on f6, but after queen f6, you cannot anymore take this d6 pawn. So black, easily removing this black color bishop of the opponent from the board shouldn't really experience the slightest problem. So queen f3 is playable. Sometimes it's played just a move more or less with the idea to get a game without so much theory. But I don't think that it's too dangerous. Knight bd7 is often played here. I believe h6 is the most accurate move. I would advise you to play h6, because now bishop f6, of course, queen f6, this endgame is not too dangerous for black, obviously. Then where to go with the bishop? That's a good question. On h4, the problem, if you go on h4, you cannot play queen g3 anymore. And this is most of the time is the idea, is white's idea after queen f3 to get queen g3. So black probably can just develop normally, and you never have queen g3. So the whole point of the queen f3 move is not clear then. So bishop d2 is played sometimes, a little bit strange square for the bishop. Queen b6, knight b3, knight bd7. Again, very typical play. You will see a lot of this type of games, type of setups in bishop g5 variation. Castle, bishop e7 or queen c7, followed by b5. In this version, with this a bit kind of dubious bishop on d2, I believe, no problem for black. So then bishop e3 is probably the most logical move. But then queen c7, long castle, knight bd7. And I think it's quite useful to have h6, bishop e3 included. So now, well, logically the game would proceed in this fashion. Queen g3, b5, let's say a3, rook b8, also f3, very typical type of play for Najdorf. But here, I think queen is a bit too early on g3. Let's say e5 is one of the possible moves, knight b3, knight b6. Okay, just a complicated position. I like black. I think black should be happy with the outcome of the opening. So queen f3, I don't find too dangerous. So then f4. Yeah, that is the main tabia, the main position of the variation. And now, first I want to tell you about the dubious lines for black, which were long time ago, which were not dubious at all, which were playable, but then engines slowly but surely refuted those. So I'm talking about, first of all, b5, very famous Pologaevsky system. It would have been a great move, because actually it's not easy for black to manage b5 I mean, he needs to put knight on d7, queen on c7 very often, but if he could manage b5 immediately, so if not e5, black would have a great game. But e5 is a challenging move. And it was, by the way, it was, well, the time, of course, with no engines, and quite imaginative idea of b5 that after e5 takes, black has queen c7. And that was Polgoyevsky variation. He analyzed it a lot, he was playing it a lot, and he was developing the theory, and it was, you can imagine, much more difficult without engines at that time. But it seems that now it's very close to be fine, but not just. I mean, ef, queen e5 check, bishop e2, queen takes g5, castles, rook a7 only move in this position, because I guess bishop f3 is threatening at knight e4. And here the series still goes on and on, but I think nowadays black is in crisis here. Not that it's losing, not really, but white seems to be better. Engines found, at least I'll just show you what is the best way, is queen d3 according to engines, rook d7, knight e4, queen e5, and now there were c3, there were a lot of games on c3, but here black is more or less holding, even though, of course, again, yeah, not to everyone tastes, I suppose, yeah, to play like this with black. But knight f3 seems to be very strong. Queen takes b2, queen a3, and frankly, it's well, I'm not very too surprised, yeah, that black's position is not good because he's just not developed. King in the center, white is already. I mean, I'm more surprised that this variation is not losing really. That black can still fight and try to hold it. Actually, white is not winning here. He's just better according to engines. But in any case, first of all, from the theoretical point of view, it doesn't do well for black. And secondly, look at the position. Do you really like to play like this? Well, maybe, but not me. So b5, I wouldn't recommend you. Then another system which had, there was some popularity for a while, h6, bishop h4, and knight c6. It was kind of popular, I mean, because if not knight takes c6, then black can get maybe a good rouser, or at least a decent rouser, but the problem is that takes, e5, now g5, that is the whole idea, fg, knight d5. And there were lots of discussions, was not so clear if white is better or not. Now it's clear. Now everything is clear with strong engines, knight e4. And well, you can check the game, switch on the engine. It's pretty bad for black. I mean, well, at least much worse, if not more. So this system, I believe, is practically refuted. Knight c6. Then we will come back to h6 later, because there is h6, bishop h4, queen b6 system. I will explain it later. Then another system, queen c7. It's not too bad. It's maybe the only system which is not too bad, and at the same time you don't need to know too much theory. That was, by the way, my choice. When I played against Vishy Anand, the World Championship match, game 11. I was two points behind and 2 games to go, so I needed to win with black. I didn't know anything really about bishop g5 at the time, and anyways, in the main lines, white can force a draw. So guys, my trainers, they showed me this queen c7, that at least you can play somehow. But objectively, yeah, it's not a great move. Take on f6 takes. Vishy played f5 against me, which is also very good, of course. I mean, he just needed a draw, so he was not really fighting for opening advantage. But anyway, he got it because I didn't want to draw. Well, it was a special situation, so it's not so relevant in the sense of, you know, I mean, fighting for advantage. I mean, so queen f3, yeah, many good moves. Actually, queen f3 is probably the simplest. For white, lately I saw that Garry Kasparov played a Blitz tournament, and he was, of course, he's not playing chess anymore, and he doesn't want to go into this sharp, complicated line, so he just wanted to play something. But I mean, so he chose this system. I don't think that he believes that it's a great system, but just, you know, to play Blitz. But even in Blitz, he was crushed at least 2 times, and because nowadays top players, they know everything, and I remember, they were just beating him with the best engine move, so out of preparation. That's what I meant, telling you that in the bishop g5 you have little choice. I mean, you must play principal lines, and you must go into theory, because let's say queen f3. Well, okay, now with knight c6, long castle, you get pretty bad rouser, because queen on f3 actually is much better than on d2. That's the difference, because all these rouser positions are usually the queen is on d2. Here it's much more active, and the bishop now can develop. For instance, after bishop d7, you can go king b1, of course, but also bishop c4 is already interesting in this position to get bishop to b3 and then f5. So this computer doesn't like it at all. It thinks white is much better here. And b5 is more in the Najdorf style. And at least after long castle, b4, knight e2, h5, maybe not too bad. But a3, also I already explained you, I think, this typical idea in the chapter about rousers, that sometimes it's important to play a3, not to let b4 in this structure. And after knight c6, long castle, knight d4, rook d4, and then white is just the problem of black, that if he manages to develop, he can get a decent counterplay, but he's just so much behind in development that white, in both games, I remember Gary lost to Anand and maybe to Duda, if I remember correctly. And then white just started very quickly, f5 and so on, and then black's position somehow collapsed. So all in all, no, of course it's playable, especially depends pretty much on the level you are playing on, but objectively not sound. So, and for the white players, definitely it's not going to be a problem here. So then let's now proceed with serious systems, which are pretty sound and not so easy for white to get an advantage. So I would like to start analyzing, serious lines, the main variations with queen b6 or h6, bishop h4, queen b6. Well, there is some difference, but quite often it gets to the same position. Frankly, this is a very opening line for professionals, I believe, as I suppose many of you are not professional players, at least not yet. So for black, I wouldn't advise you to play this queen b6, just because it's pretty much nowadays about computer variations and memorizing. Yeah, there is not so much play anymore after queen b6. Well, there are two, 3 lines where position is just complicated and playable, but what was at some point of time extremely interesting, complicated variation with a lot of imagination required to play it, now not so much. A powerful engine, a powerful computer, and memory. That would be enough, most likely, because theories is developed incredibly deeply. But in any case, first of all, you need to know what to do with white against it. And maybe somebody likes to play queen b6. So of course I'm going to give you the directions mainly. I will not give all the lines. There are many variations, and the thing is that basically I'm of not much use here, because the play is so direct and sharp that I cannot do better than push the button, but this can be done by yourself, by you. So there is no big difference who is pushing the space bar in the computer. But I will definitely give you directions if you want to study deeper this variation with either color. You can do it at home. I mean, you need to really to check it very carefully, because you miss one move, or your engine is not strong enough and your opponent's engine is stronger, you are in trouble, I can tell you. Or you forget, that's also an option. But objectively, I believe objectively this variation is completely sound for black. And in fact, I was not playing bishop g5 mainly because of bishop b6. Actually, I played once, I think only in classical chess, bishop g5 system with white, but I was always worried about queen b6 because I couldn't find any advantage. A lot of tries. Okay, I don't like to play in this fashion that I'm checking the memory of my opponent. If he memorize it correctly, remembers everything, then it's probably a draw by force. If not, maybe I can win by force. It has not so much to do with chess, frankly. But it's a valid strategy because Vachier Lagrave, a French player who is playing Najdorf all his life, and by the way, also you need to study his games. He's a very big specialist of Najdorf, and he is playing this queen b6 variation. And actually, he's losing quite many games because he all the time confuses the move orders, so just forgets exactly in this line how to play to take on e6 with bishop or with a pawn. And then I already saw him losing quite a number of games, obviously not because of his preparation failure, but simply because of the memory failure. So, well, you have to think twice if you want to play it with black, because white has many tries. And also it's quite dangerous, much less now than in the 70s when Fischer was playing it. By the way, Robert James Fischer said once about this variation that in Najdorf bishop g5, taking the pawn on b2, I mean playing queen b6, queen b2 variation is even more dangerous than getting married. That is his sentence. By the way, I can just add that he actually was taking the pawn on b2 a number of times, but he never got married at the end of the day. So, but back to chess. So queen b6, you can play it right here. This is the most common way of doing it, and I believe I don't see why not, because Vachier Lagrave sometimes plays via this move order. So black can start with h6, bishop h4, and now play queen b6. It has its pluses. For example, now white simply cannot play the system knight b3, which is nothing too dangerous without h6, bishop g5, but at least playable. Here he just losing the pawn. That's a problem, that the 4 pawn is hanging. So like this, black eliminates this system. Then, if I remember correctly, also the system with queen d3 was already less dangerous, I think so. But in any case, black can transpose queen b2, rook b1, queen a3, f5, and so on. But I think there was some additional option for black. But the problem is a3. I mean, if white is playing queen d2 here, black has nothing better than to transpose this position. And maybe in f5 again, h6, bishop h4, including h6, bishop h4 might be in black's favor. But e5, this is the main theoretical line. Here it's a clear transposition. So it might make sense, but the problem is that actually the a3 line becomes much more dangerous for black because with h6, bishop h4 included, bishop f2 is a very serious option. Of course, also very typical, by the way, idea for the Sicilian, queen b6, a3, just protecting in a way the b2 pawn, because now with a pawn on a3, the queen is trapped after knight a4. So you should also remember it's a very typical way of meeting queen b6, attacking the pawn on b2 if your bishop is not on c1, a3, and queen b2 is not working. And here he played many games, actually very beautiful games, very interesting, with Caruana, with Giri, with many other players. I mean, but finally, I think nowadays he's more trying to start with queen b6 without h6. So I guess he was not totally satisfied with the opening outcomes. For example, okay, I think something like this was in those games. He would start with bishop e7 on knight d7. Anyways, it would get to this position. And it's extremely complicated. g4 and a lot of games. I really don't know what is the final word well, I guess there is no final word, but what is the current state of the theory here? So, I mean, it's very complicated. But my guess is that since Maxim have dropped this variation, probably because he's very stubborn, he's playing a certain line until he has a certain problem. He never just changes or drops some line without a big reason. So I suppose things are not so rosy here for black. But in any case, in my opinion, it's simpler to start with queen b6 because the side lines which white have, for example, knight b3 move, I don't think it's really dangerous. Let's say knight b3. It's just playable, no more than that. Knight bd7. And then we get to a typical position, which we are going to discuss right after this queen b6, but only that the white knight is already on b3 instead of his usual position on d4, and that most of the time it's in black's favor. So here, if in those lines you will see how difficult is black's life, and is able to equalize maybe only by, with very, very precise moves. Here you can just play this position with black. Also with white, if you want to avoid all those crazy variations with queen takes b2, you can play knight b3 here and just play a game, but I don't think white is any better. I mean, queen d2 or e2, I think Grishuk played queen e2 against Vasily Graf, but black is doing the same thing, more or less, long castle b5, a3, very typical play, bishop e7, g4, and now rook b8, for example, or bishop b7. Very complicated playable position, but I believe black can be satisfied with the outcome of the opening. Or the same, you can have this position with the queen on d2. Full of play, complicated, unclear. So knight b3, I don't think it represents any danger. a3, here it's already not so dangerous because, as I mentioned already, there is no bishop f2 idea. So black sometimes plays knight c6. I think that was played, for example, by Nepomniachtchi against Nakamura. Knight b3, bishop e7, and then queen f3, and it's a complicated game. But actually, I believe knight d7 is more precise, in my opinion. And I don't see any problem because, black is just developing in a normal way, as he usually does. I mean, the queen d2 is still not working because queen takes b2 is possible, knight b3, and now with a pawn on a3, actually, you're really threatening to trap the queen, but black can play knight c5 here and just being in time to save this queen by luck, let's say. And so queen d2 doesn't work, and then f5 is a logical move. I mean, at least to do something active, but here black has a number of options. I thought ef5 actually is the simplest. It's very simple and fine, ef5, because now already, you have to take with a pawn, because if knight f5, black can also simply take on b2 already, and you finally get the square now, queen a5. So queen is not getting trapped. So ef5 and bishop e7, and it's very typical position. White is a bit overexposed. His pawn on f5 is weakening his king. He still cannot really play long castle. For bishop c4 should be the best move, but black is fine here. So I don't think also a3 is dangerous. Then queen d3 and queen d2. There are only two serious moves left. Queen d3 is, it's quite sharp, it's quite interesting, but also the current state of theory is pretty fine for black. I mean, more than one option, but queen b2, of course, you have to take, rook b1, queen a3, and f5 now. That is white's idea. So you have the same type of play with the queen on d2, but in some lines, queen on d3 is maybe more active. Because white also tried bishop e2 sometimes, but here knight bd7, it doesn't seem that white has enough for the pawn. Even if it's visually very active, only one pawn, b line, open b line, but I tried my best to find something for white here. Now actually barely you can equalize if if you can equalize. I mean, black's position is very solid. It's not easy to mate him, even with this advantage in development. So this is not recommended. And after f5, here a lot of theory, many moves. By the way, a beautiful game, absolutely beautiful game. Gashimov Grishuk, you should study it just aesthetically. It's beautiful. Grishuk won. But I think now very good move is queen a5. I mean, after queen a5, I think, well, it's quite simple actually for black. And well, the best white can have is, well, basically a long forced variation, which is ending in a drawish position, or playing just for compensation, takes bishop e2. But this type of position is, well, it's playable for white. Yeah, white has some compensation, some play, let's say knight c6. Usually white exchanges on c6 and just trying then to play slow. But still, black is a pawn up, a central pawn, two bishops, no real threats against king. Yeah, I don't like it for white. I mean, I think if somebody has chances to be better, it's black than white. It's more black than white. So, and otherwise, I don't see anything better than playing queen c4. And actually that is why queen a5 was not so popular before, because queen c4, now it gets pretty direct. Knight d7, fe, queen takes g5, ef7 check, only moves, of course, king e7. Well, don't worry, king is pretty often in such a dire straits in bishop g5 variation. Black takes a piece. You will see in other lines, knight bd7 line, that it happens pretty often. Yeah, don't worry. It's not so easy to mate this black skin. Here, white at least can get back the material tactically. Queen e6 check, king d8, queen e8 check. Very nice combination. Knight x8, knight e6 check, king e7 takes on e8, takes on e8, knight g5. Already lots of things happened on the board. Actually, extremely exciting game. But it's only the, well, it's not even the full theory yet. It's just the theory still continues. And because it's 6 are not so easy for black here, it needs to be precise. So the best way is knight c5. Now knight d5. Of course, black, if he just manages to develop, he will be, well, simply better. So white has to hurry. Knight d5, and it's not easy for black, but bishop e7 seems to manage actually equality. Knight c7 check, king d8, knight e8, bishop takes g5, and still the theory is not over. Knight b6, rook e8, bishop d3, knight takes e4. I think we are still in one of the games of Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, and I have no doubt it was still his preparation. And finally, here, well, we can conclude that the endgame is pretty much drawish. So queen d3 is interesting, but also to play it with white, you need to study other moves than queen a5. It's by far not the only move. But queen a5, yeah, I couldn't find anything for white. I think it's a good move. So then we finally get to this main line, queen d2. Well, queen takes b2, otherwise it doesn't make any sense to play queen b6. I mean, you can still play here, knight c6. I think it's possible. It's not too bad, but here I think this white at minimum can do this. Sorry, and then long castle with a typical rouser position, but quite pleasant for white. So after queen takes b2, white has two moves, knight b3 and rook b1. In the 70s, 80s, knight b3 was by far the main line. Queen a3, well, otherwise white wants to play a3, and yeah, your queen can get trapped, so better to escape sooner than later. And after queen a3, bishop takes f6 is the main move. Actually, there was a famous game, Spassky-Fischer, from the famous match in Reykjavik, 1972. Spassky won very quickly with bishop d3. I think at that time it was a novelty. Well, one of the very few games he managed to win in this match, which was won convincingly by the American genius. But nowadays it's not considered to be too dangerous. Of course, at that time there were no engines. The position was totally new, and it was difficult to analyze and to play it. Nowadays, after so many games and engines helping, it's much easier. You can just check the games, check engine, and you will not get any problem with bishop d3. But bishop f6 here, it's just a playable position. Takes on f6, bishop e2, h5, castles. h5 is one of the options, but logical. And knight d7. Sometimes black puts a knight on c6 also, but knight d7 seems to be more flexible. And again, by the way, this position you can play with white. If you want just some initiative, okay, you are ready to sacrifice a pawn and play a complicated, unclear position with some initiative. That is one of the possibilities. Because here there are not too many forced lines. It's a strategical game. I think black objectively, let's say objectively, black is probably slightly better. But it doesn't mean much. I mean, for sure, black is not worse, but the game is very, very complicated. So, of course, white can easily win. So, if you like to study this position with either color, just check games. And I remember there was a very, very interesting game, Nigel Short against Garry Kasparov in the 90s, which ended in a draw, very complicated game, and other games of strong players. I think that game went like this, king h1. So you see, it's a slow game, no hurry. Both sides do not hurry so much. h4, h3, and bishop e7, and so on. You will see how the game develop. Of course, here, this position is, if you want to play it, of course, you need to analyze it. It's to understand actually more, not even in the tactical sense, but to understand the patterns, the ideas in this position, how to play, because it's difficult position to play with both colors, because white is pawn down with a bad structure, black is solid, but you still need to do something with the skin in the center, so very complex position. But nowadays rook b1 became more popular because actually things are much more complicated than everybody thought. Queen a3. Again, in all times, f5 for a very long time was the main move, and almost the only real try. But now, actually, knight c6 is a huge theory after knight c6, but it's sort of not so relevant anymore. It's okay for black, but you need to remember lots of lines for black, and that's why I think that bishop e7 is much more practical to play, because here white has much less choice, and it seems that black is holding a draw by force here, but you need just to memorize very accurately. Actually, the funny thing is that I think Maxim Vachilagraf, I'm sure that he learned it, analyzed everything till forced draw practically, and he managed once, but I think he lost 2 games in this line, just forgetting his analysis, because the idea is after fe, now bishop takes e6. A strange move. In general, here it's the play is so computerish, that moves sometimes do not make sense. I mean, it's obviously every human would think of taking with a pawn, looks logical, but that is not good. For some reason, bishop e6. And now the main line and the only try for white to fight for advantage is takes and bishop c4, and this looks really dangerous. But knight d7, bishop e6, knight c5, and now white has several ways to play, and always it gets with a very, very precise computer play. Finally, it ends in a draw pretty much by force in this position. So f5, I believe that bishop e7, is basically practically a forced draw, only that you need to remember all those lines. And but e5 actually with engines getting stronger and stronger, at some point people realize that it's much more dangerous than it was considered to. Now h6 or d5, it leads to the same position. You can start like this, and then, for example, here anyway h6 has to be played, bishop h4. So this position is Anyway, but if you, or D, F, E, H6, So whatever, let's say H6, I think it's a little bit more accurate just here to play H6, Bishop H4, D takes E5, F takes E5, and now Black has a choice, a difficult choice of 3 lines, all 3 probably enough for equality, for a draw, and in all 3 lines you need to memorize a lot. But at least it's Black who is choosing here. So Knight D5 is a little bit sad line. I would say Black is really just trying to make a draw here, but probably managing Knight D5, E D5, Bishop E6 now is the main move. And now, for example, one of the main lines, the main line, although White has other tries also, but it goes like this. Takes, Bishop D3, Bishop E7, check, King D8, takes, castles, Knight D7, now very important move. I don't know if you will be so happy playing this position with Black. Basically, I don't advise you to play it. If you already go for it, just try to analyze it till a draw. Don't play, because with this king on the center, Rook F7, Queen C5 check, King H1, now very important move, Rook F8, and series still goes on. And it's most likely it's a draw at the end of the day, but now nobody likes to go for it anymore, just because even if it's a draw, it's not a big fun to play like this. Then another system is G5. If Bishop G3, Knight H5, this seems to be good for Black, and EF, GH, Bishop E2 is a main line. And here again, if you are interested, you can study this position. A big theory, completely computerish play, non-human play, just some computer moves. And I think at the end it holds also for Black, at least according to the state of theory. But if I was Black, frankly, I wouldn't play Queen B6 line. I like to play chess and not to make a competition of whose memory is better. But still, if I was Black, I would rather go probably for Knight FD7. It's more solid, and now Knight E4. This is pretty force from both sides. Takes, Queen D5, Queen E3, Queen takes E5. What to say about this position? As you can see, White is 3 pawns down, but he's got quite some initiative. Two-thirds of the moves of Black were made with a queen. Really strange play, totally computerish play. And now Bishop E2 is a main move. Caruana played C3, if you remember, quite a famous game against Maxim Vachilagraf. He prepared the C3, which also doesn't really give any advantage, but at least it was new. Maxim started to think, and then somehow it was not so easy over the board to play against a prepared opponent, but it also doesn't give an advantage. And otherwise the main move Bishop E2, but also theory goes on and on, never finishes. And finally it seems that with best play from both sides, it ends in a draw. What can I say about Queen B6? My feeling is that quite many of you who are listening to this course and to this lesson will not really enjoy this kind of chess, just playing Queen B6, taking on B2, analyzing a lot, memorizing a lot just to make a forced draw maybe at the end of the day. If some they like to play like this, I gave you the directions. You need to do some more work, of course, to finalize, because you really need to know this line, just move per move, really move per move. And but for White, I've mentioned, I think there is no advantage, but there are many different tries. So basically nowadays, when this line appears on the board on the top level, it's most of the time White is just trying to check Black's memory, and actually often pretty successfully. This is its Queen B6 variation. Once upon a time, a very exciting, interesting line. Now, a matter of taste. I don't find it so exciting. Just some computer play, not so much place for imagination anymore, but still a very important variation, a very critical test of the bishop g5 line. So now let's maybe turn back to some human chess, and I'm going to show you two more systems for black, actually playable, also you need to be extremely precise, but I think very playable and a bit more human. I would advise you, if you like just to enjoy chess, if you are not playing the last game of the World Championship match and you need a draw to win the title, then maybe better not to play Queen b6, but to play more human positions, typical Sicilians, which are probably more enjoyable. So those are knight bd7 and bishop e7. Knight bd7 is much more popular, but actually bishop e7 is not refuted at all. I mean, things are not so easy after bishop e7. I mean, black still, in the main line, black still experience some problems to equalize fully, but I think it's probably holding bishop e7. The advantage of bishop e7 system is that white basically has only one setup which can offer something, because after knight bd7, white has both queen f3 and queen e2. Here, queen e2 doesn't really work so well already, because first of all, b5, by the way, is good, but the simplest is h6. And this typical trick, which sometimes works, sometimes not. Here it works. Bishop h4, knight takes e4. Bishop e7, knight takes e3. And black is doing well here. So then probably the best for white is to take on f6, long castle. But after knight bd7, black has a very good version of this variation, because sometimes white takes on f6, as you will see, but then he needs to at least push g4, g5, h4 very quickly. Otherwise, here black is just fine. Well, same goes of queen d2. Again, b5 is fine, I suppose, but still h6 is possible. So all in all, queen f3 seems to be the only reasonable move, because as I've already explained, if white is not trying to play for long castle, trying to do short castle, then black simply will have a very good Sicilian. So queen f3 is clearly the best move in this position. And now, well, again, the question is how to manage b5. So black's setup is to get queen c7, knight d7, b5, bishop b7. Yeah, that is what black wants. So he starts with queen c7, long castle, knight bd7. And now white has two options. Both are quite dangerous, but probably black can hold with a very, very precise play in both cases. g4 is the main move. Actually, here the play seems to be rather typical complicated Sicilian with a lot of options. In fact, it's pretty direct, because the point is that if black manages b5, bishop b7, rook c8, and white will not launch some very concrete action, then black will be at least equal, because so white has to act very quickly here. Also bishop d3 and or g4. All the moves like king b1 are already not great, because again b5 comes, and e5 always bishop b7, yeah. And then king b1 might be a very important loss of tempi, and black is just doing well. So let's start with bishop d3, also a very dangerous move. b5, from other point of view, black also doesn't have too many plans here. Yeah, white just wants rook e1, and then something will happen in the center of the board. So b5, rook h1, bishop b7. And this position, yeah, you need to memorize some variations here, because white should act quickly. Two main moves here are knight d5. Yeah, not dangerous, but still this move is possible. And queen g3. Well, again, yeah, as I mentioned, let's say if white is losing a tempi, making just a useful move, then queen b6, also very important move in these positions. You will see something similar in knight bd7 variation, attacking the knight, and well, there are no tactics like knight d5, knight a5, do not seem to work well. And then after knight b3, black starts his counterattack. Let's say b4, knight e2, a5, knight d2, a4. And here already black is simply better, actually. Because not really that he's going to mate soon, no, but it by the way, it can come one day. But that white lost control in the center, and no e5, f5 is not dangerous, and well, black has a very good position. The knights are not great, white's knights. So what I want to show that white has to really to act quickly. Let's start with knight d5. A beautiful move, but not extremely dangerous. First of all, knight takes d5, e takes d5, bishop takes g5 actually is good enough. White tried all kind of sacrifices here and not sacrifices. Fg was also an option. For example, this is supposed to be the main line, bishop takes d5, g6. But here white is, well, actually not really playing for advantage. Black is fine. I mean, it finally white manages to equalize but no more than that. But maybe ed5 is even more principal. I'm not sure white after ed5 white can fully equalize because now if e takes d5, king f8, and anyways knight f5 is the best move, bishop d8. So it's interesting to start with knight f5 because d4 doesn't work, but black can still play king f8. Well, as you see, you better know these lines because it's very difficult to find it all over the board. The point is that knight takes e7, d4 is better for black. So white's best is to take on d5, and after bishop d8, yeah, well, looks quite scary, but black is better. There were games and engines are showing the same also. I mean, after all, white doesn't have so many resources. But I mean, black has his king. Of course, rooks are not really great on a8 and on h8, but still it's a piece, and there are no really very big threats for white. So let's say queen g3. Now rook g8 is an important move, and white has to take on g7. Here, after rook takes g7, bishop h6, knight h5. Well, actually here it's black who is playing for a win. It's not clear if white can manage to make a draw or not here, but we are not talking about white being better. So knight d5 is an interesting try, but not too dangerous. Queen g3, yeah, this is a very serious move. Queen g3, there is a lot of tactics hanging in the air. All this knight f5, knight d5, e5, so better, yeah, not to start thinking over the board in this position, especially if your opponent is playing still from, from his preparation. So here it seems to me that both moves are holding b4 and h6, but I would rather prefer b4. It's more direct. h6, according to engines, is also fine. If bishop g4, then black has g5, and this seems to be, well, at least okay, and also not too many forced lines. But bishop takes f6 is an issue. Bishop takes f6, bishop takes b5. This is the point of white's play, and now this position is pretty forced. Takes queen b6, very important, this square. Knight takes g6, king f8. Well, I analyzed this position. It's difficult to play with black, I would say. White, for example, I think the best move is a3 here, and now bishop c6 is possible. Other moves, well, you can check it with engines. Well, computer holds in every line, but of course, yeah, white has initiative, and well, I don't know if you can memorize it, because if you again start to play this position, it's not easy to play it. But anyways, just to show you that, for example, if e5, bishop e7, now there were some very difficult moves to find. At some point, I remember that after f5, black had to take, if I remember correctly. At some point, I think there was this position, and then some really strange move, bishop d5, was working. I might be mistaken, maybe immediately bishop d5 here, but yeah, maybe. So, but in any case, check it with engine. I mean, not really something I would like to do even after analyzing it with the computer. So that's why I think I would advocate for b4 move. Actually, Lone Castle is not so bad already in this type of position, just that here tactically also bishop takes b5 is pretty dangerous. But b4 seems to hold as dangerous as it looks, but there were also many games already on this position, so it's pretty. Knight d5 now, this is the plan, or this is White's plan, to play knight d5, ed. There is a e5 move, but black can equalize in several ways. I mean, it's absolutely not dangerous. So ed, king d8. Okay, this position is not looking easy to play, but actually White doesn't have so many resources. Knight c6 check, it's supposed to be the main line. I tried some moves trying to double rook e2. Yeah, nothing really was working. I mean, black is sometimes White would manage somehow a forced draw in some line, sometimes not, but objectively black plays correctly. It's not White who is playing for advantage. So knight c6 check, bishop takes c6, dc6, knight c5. Bishop h4 is the best move. Now rook g8 only move in this position. And here, it's still not easy to play it, but White has not so many actually options, because, for instance, if bishop c4, I think already knight e4 is good for black. So not so many. Bishop takes h7 is an important move, and by the way, very beautiful combination. Bishop takes h7, rook h8 back. Now it's important if bishop retreats that the bishop is hanging on h4. So queen takes g7, rook takes c7, queen takes f6. This is pretty beautiful, because of course bishop f6 is bad. Bishop takes f6 and king c8, rook e8. So black has rook takes h4, queen takes f7, rook h8, and it seems like black is just winning, but suddenly there is rook e5 move, and maybe most probably black holds here. White holds, but black for sure, I mean, has no problem. So yeah, this is just White is already trying to escape with this rook e5 and maybe manages. So bishop h7 is also leading nowhere. Then main move is bishop f5. And here again, you can just push the engine button. It seems like it's a long line after queen takes c6, leading to more or less a forced draw. But actually, the fun is that engine also considers as the second best, or even the best, depends on which depths, just playing a5. Just a useful move, trying to explain that, he's not in a hurry, there are no threats. And also giving it as equal after e5, but otherwise queen takes e6, now already bishop at h7, rook e8, and so on and so on. It just goes on and on, very forced variation, and it ends in a draw in the deep endgame. So, okay, a bit unpleasant, I agree, but from other point of view, very forced. Yeah, and okay, if White doesn't do all this, then he easily can get worse. So, in my opinion, this bishop d3 is a very dangerous move, but if you study carefully at home, and for a certain level, the knowledge which I gave you already is enough, definitely enough. Okay, if you are a grandmaster, maybe you should check a bit more, those lines, just to be sure, just to know exactly. I mean, you can be sure black is holding there. It's just that you need to get into the position to understand how computer defends there, that if in case it happens in a practical game, that you know what to do. But it seems to be holding. So then that's why g4 is a main move in this position, and it's also very dangerous. So g4, now b5 has to be played, bishop takes f6. This is the point of White's play, because now the problem that seems that you have to take with a knight, because bishop takes f6, just tactical, bishop takes b5 works, and here White is better. Also gf6 doesn't seem to work so well. After f5, knight e5, queen h3, It seems that again white is better, because after b4 he calls knight e2, and then knight f4 starts to come. There is an issue, typical story, yeah, in those structures. There is an issue with the sixth pawn. So that's why knight f6 has to be played. g5, knight d7. Well, here I mentioned already that if you pick up this bishop, most of the time black is doing well, but here just it's very direct. f5, definitely the best move. Otherwise, again, black has no problem at all. For instance, just one move, h4, and black is already in time to play b4, knight e2, bishop b7, and he's not worse at all here. Getting rook c8 and starts to get counterplay, very good position. So f5 is a correct move. Now actually bishop takes g5, check was always the main line. King b1, castles, fe6, and now knight b6. Here black might be holding, but black is really suffering trying to make a draw by all means. Actually, I'm not sure that he cannot manage it with best defense. The series still goes on and on in this position. But yeah, this is a bit sad, yeah, to play with black, and there is no forced draw anyways. So here I wouldn't worry with white about this, but castles, and I wouldn't play with black, also bishop takes g5 check, but after castles, yeah, again, looks very dangerous, but this position I analyzed quite seriously, and also it was played by strong players like Alexander Krishuk in classical chess. So I mean, it's not losing by force, even if it looks like. Black is not getting mated here. And now the best move is rook g1. Otherwise, what are the options? Okay, if f6 is not mating, believe me or not, but black can simply take twice, and now white has nothing better than there is a long line like this, and white is managing to force a draw somehow. I believe it's going like this. Queen g3 check, king h8, knight takes e5, because if rook is taken, then check and taking the queen. And now bishop d8, and so on and so on. At some point rook takes d8, and it leads to an equal position. I mean, white is trying to make a draw here. So again, it's a dangerous line to play as long as you don't know, yeah, all those lines. Once you know, you are sure, you know, bulletproof, engine proof. You don't worry about your weak king, yeah. And actually, white can easily lose here as well. So f6, don't worry, it's holding for black. Then yeah, fe leads to more or less a force equal endgame. Knight e6, rook takes f3, knight takes e7, bishop takes g5 check, king b1, rook b8, also rook a7 I think is okay. Rook b8 is maybe a bit more accurate, and it's just equal this position. What else? h4. h4 is possible, but here already b4 seems to work pretty well, because okay, if knight a4, knight c5, and again knight takes dc5, white is not in time to mate. Yeah, it's just a matter of one tempi. Yeah, of course white is very close to start mating, but just one tempi, not in time always. And now after knight c2, here in comparison with the rook g1 variation, here black actually has bishop b7 move. And okay, there are still some lines, because here e5 is a worse version. Here white would be better after e5, but already bishop b7 is possible, because with a rook on g1, that's why rook g1 is the main move. Now white just wants f6, so b4 has to be played again. Yeah, knight e2, and now already bishop b7, f6 is very strong. Yeah, that is the difference, because with a pawn on h4 you would have just taken twice on f6 and there is no mate. Here you cannot, and the position is, well, probably, I mean, there is still a way to try bishop d8, but I'm afraid it will not end well. So that's why in this position e5 is already played. Yeah, again, important not to confuse, because here, for example, after e5, f6, this is a line, ed, fe, rook e8, knight d4. Okay, h4 is 10 times more useful than rook g1, and here white is just better, because he very quickly, let's say in this position, h5, h6 is white's idea, and he very quickly organizes the attack. That's why After h4, only bishop b7. And after rook g1, you probably bishop b7 is already bad, but e5 works. f6, otherwise white can even get worse. So f6, ed, fe, rook e8, knight takes d4, knight e5. And this position is start position of your analysis. If you want to play it with black, this variation, I think it's holdable. It's, well, white has certain initiative. You need, well, maybe to analyze it a bit more. There are moves like there is queen b3 move. Usually queen f4 is played. Was a game Giri Grishuk was played queen f4, and I looked at this position. I think black should hold it. Why? Because the point is that black wouldn't have any problem at all. Let's say if he takes on e7, the problem is that white wants h4, h5, and then h6 or g6. But black is, with accurate play, black seems to be in time to parry it, and just in time to finally manage equality. So all in all, bishop e7 line is very direct, and to me it seems that the only try for white is this main line which I've shown you, and but probably black should hold here. But in any case, from the white side, yeah, you see that black is practically making only moves, and at the end of this main line, white is still somewhat better. Of course, if you are so unlucky that your opponent analyzes this position day and night and finally finds all best moves and manage a draw, okay, bad luck. But you are very safe in this final position of the main line with white, and still black has to show how exactly he wants to equalize. And then knight bd7 variation. Very popular line also. I would advise you actually to play it. I mean, for players who want, of course, again, you cannot avoid, memorizing some lines, but at least here the game is there are quite some, it's not so forcing in the queen e2 variation, and it's just very complicated, very, very sharp, complicated position. So it's first of all, I think it's doing pretty okay for black, and also it's more interesting. Yeah, if you don't want to compete in again in memorizing and in the art of pushing the button, who memorized better and who went deeper in his analysis, then knight bd7 might be an option. Now here queen e2, queen f3, there are two main moves. Let's start with queen f3. Queen e2 is supposed to be the most dangerous nowadays. Again, as you already know, that queen d2 is not good in this position. Again, you have h6, yeah, or maybe also b5. So queen shouldn't, yeah, simply cannot manage to get to d2 in Rauser bishop g5. In Najdorf bishop g5. So queen f3. Let's start with queen f3. Queen c7. Long castle b5. Well, now white has some forced draws. I mean, you can check it, but it's already was played so many times, and there is nothing white can really find there. I mean, like e5, this is a very well-known line. Bishop b7, queen h3, d6, knight takes e6, fe6, taking on e6, bishop e7, white takes bishop takes b5 here, and but there it's white who is trying to make a draw. With the best play, white manages, but yeah, for sure, I can guarantee you there is no way white can win here. So just check a bit the games and the engine, but it's at best it's a forced draw for white. Then another way, bishop takes f6, knight f6, e5, bishop b7, and then white has some moves here. Also, you can check, nothing dangerous at all. I mean, black is fine. Just push the button and that's it. Yeah. So bishop d3 then. Of course, now bishop b7, yeah, rook h1. Now, as you can see, you can actually transpose to play bishop e7 to this variation, which I've just shown you. And I think it's holding pretty well. But the most direct move is queen b6, as Gelfand likes to play. I think he first played it back in the 80s or 90s or beginning of 90s, and since then nothing have changed. Black seems to be doing well here. Again, very, very forcing lines, very narrow for black, but well, for 30 years nobody could refute it, neither without engines, neither with engines. So it seems to be good, but yeah, bishop e7 is also holding. But this, I would already here, if black is given a chance in the knight bd7 line to play queen b6, I think I would have gone for it, because white doesn't have a very big choice. So again, if knight b3 before, as the same story, black can only be better. So quite an interesting bishop takes f6 try. Actually, knight takes f6, f5. Well, because of course immediately f5 the knight on d4 is hanging. So here white is taking on f6 just in order that after f5 queen takes d4, bishop b5 check is possible. But long castle here, very important move, because e5, I'm not quite sure about this position. White has knight d5 move. Otherwise, it's very typical for black to play e5, bishop e7, and it could be quite good. But knight d5 is a bit annoying. I mean, I'm not sure black is fine here, because takes, and knight e2. And then white will slowly maneuver the knight to e3 somewhere, trying to get this d5 square. Again, maybe black, I mean, those positions are quite tricky. Maybe black can still be okay, but I think that better to play long castle. I mean, that's for sure fine. I mean, very forcing line, because now you again want to take on d4 already. Knight b3, and now b4, knight b1. Well, white doesn't have any better squares than that. d5. Knight d2, and the last important move, king b8. And here I can assure you black is doing fine. I mean, black equalized. So that is an important line to know. And even more important is to know what to do after knight d5. This idea we've seen already. Now you cannot really take the knight on d5. So queen takes d4, you should go all in. And yeah, bishop takes f6, gf6, bishop takes b5. Queen c5. Yeah, this is an important position, but again, it was checked so many times. I think there is nothing for white to catch here. It's like a forced draw, more or less, even though, by the way, not so clear if white has a forced draw, because let's say there are two moves. Nakamura played against Gelfand in classical chess. I think knight takes f6 check, king d8, knight takes d7. Okay, if bishop takes d7, then you just attack the knight, like bishop e7, and then white will lose a piece. So that's why bishop takes d7. Knight takes d7 is played, queen takes b5, knight takes f8, rook takes f8, and in this position black is at least equal. Queen a3, because otherwise if rook takes d6 check, probably black's king will escape on this flank. Rook c8, king b8, and then black will probably be just better. So queen a3, and now king a8, and in case of queen takes d6, queen c6 is white should retreat with the queen, and well, black is not worse. I mean, white probably will manage to make a draw, just some perpetual somewhere, but not really playing for advantage. Very forced line, very direct. So, and then b4, this is the main move here, and black has nothing better than to play queen takes b5 check, knight c7 check, king e7, knight takes b5, 8 takes b5. And this strange position, well, queen d3, rook a6. And this strange position with a, well, very strange material. But it seems to be at least equal for, I mean, black is at least equal. Actually, in a practical game, black has, I think, better practical chances, because he's got a lot of initiative. I mean, let's say queen takes b5, yeah. Well, if you don't take this pawn, then black slowly will develop, and okay, his white skin is pretty weak. So queen takes b5, for example, rook b6, queen d3, and bishop h6 now. G3 and rook c8 also, I think rook a8 was okay, rook c8. And frankly, white has a certain material advantage if you can actually count at all the material balance. Actually, the material balance is white has queen and two pawns against two bishops and knight. Not a very usual situation in chess, but black has actually very serious potential of attack on the white skin, so I wouldn't advise you to go with white to this position. I think black's chances are, at least in practical games, are clearly better. So it seems that, yeah, this queen b6 is very risky, but it works. So, when you play Sicilian, especially Najdorf, sometimes in very critical lines, you should trust that even if position looks terribly dangerous, if you're afraid of terribly dangerous looking positions, then you better play Petrov defense, yeah. But if you play Sicilian and okay, it looks dangerous, but if it's working, it's working, yeah. So I think queen b6 works. So this is about queen f3. I believe it's in crisis. Actually, nowadays practically all best players are playing queen e2 because they cannot find any idea in those queen f3, queen c7 lines I've just shown you. So queen e2, this is probably more dangerous, but it's very complicated. At least here, finally, you can relax, and I can assure you that the lines are not so forcing. So queen c7, long castle, b5, you see the same type of play. a3. Here, there was some tries. I think there was a game, for example, Jabava Karyakin, g4 before knight d5. Also, it's it's not as good as it looks, because ed, bishop e7, knight c6 looks very good. Now black, very important to know, only move knight b8. And here looks very dangerous for black, but actually black is just better. Bishop f6, gf6, bishop g2, king f8, and slowly but surely this was a game of Karyakin against Jabava. He played d5, and actually engines already show big advantage for black here, and he won the game. So this probably, it seems not to work. So white has to play a3 to stop b4. And now bishop e7, let's say it will be played. Well, here the question is whether to play h6 or not to play h6, and if yes, when. This is a bit of a difficult question. I would show you the move order. I mean, what I believe is what I would do with black, yeah. I mean, I would probably start with bishop e7. I had actually with white, I had a game against Boris Gelfand in Moscow, because he's playing a lot this exact system with black all his life. So I prepared and wanted to play this complicated variation. He played a sideline bishop b7. It's a possible option. g4, rook c8. But I was also pretty well prepared against it. I think it's not good enough. I think white should be better. Take on f6, h4, quite an important maneuver. Queen b6, rook h3. I mean, rook is very well defending the third rank. And I went on to win the game. But it's playable for black, but I wouldn't recommend. I think finally it's better for white. So my recommendation would be bishop e7. Well, actually, white doesn't have all these knight d5 ideas. They are not really working so well already. So white's only reasonable plan is to push g4. Here with the queen on e2, at least after bishop b7, white has bishop g2, and the queen definitely is better placed on e2. There are some e5 ideas, so that is the point. Then from other point of view, with the queen on e2 instead of f3, there are no these tactics, bishop takes b5, bishop d3, rook e1, all those plans are not possible already. So g4, again, now I would play h6 here, because actually you will have to play it anyway, it seems to me, because let's say if black tries, for example, there are two main plans, rook b8 or bishop b7. If black is playing rook b8, let's say bishop g2, and anyways now h6 is necessary, because if you start immediately with b4, then white already has these tactics and with a big advantage. So I would go h6 here just to forget about it, so to say, because there is bishop takes f6 option, but here black is fine. Bishop f6, and knight b5. That is the idea of just tactical, but in this position, black is okay. Takes. First of all, queen c5, I think it's practically a forced draw. But queen b6, you can also play for a win. There was a game of Lenier Dominguez, also a very big specialist of Najdorf. Knight takes d6 check, king e7. So he was playing for a win here, because black can make a draw otherwise, I think, easily. But here he was playing for a win. e5, bishop h4, and also engines are actually supporting this idea that black can try already to play for a win, and he's not worse for sure in this position. So bishop f6 is not working. Bishop h4 now. Yeah, and this is the very important position in this whole variation. And now you have, as I've mentioned already, two plans, rook b8 to bishop b7. I mean, I can tell you this position is so complicated that even after analyzing with engine, it's still difficult to have a clear verdict, because it's really very rich, a lot of possibilities for both sides. So let's say rook b8. Actually, it looks most logical, to try to push b4 and to open up the b line. But since are not so easy, bishop g2, b4. Well, otherwise, why did we play rook b8? G5 here, e5 is strong. So you see, you need to know at least here, at least few more moves you need to know. I mean, because g5 looks actually very interesting, but e5 is very powerful, and takes, and black has nothing better than after this to give up exchange to play knight d7 and try to defend the worst position. So, but b4 has to be played. This is correct. AB, rook b4, bishop e1. And this position is terribly complicated. You can analyze it, you can play it. For instance, I will just give you one of the possible lines, one of the best lines according to engine, just for your general understanding how complicated is this position. Knight c5 is not the only move, but one of the main moves. Now, let's say e5 is the most challenging. There is also h4 move, has to be checked. But e5, d5, knight f takes e5, knight fd7, knight c6, bishop g5 check, king b1, rook b6, h4, bishop f4, rook f1, g5. And computer is still not sure if white has something or not. It's still hesitating. I mean, even quite powerful engines cannot fully assess it. So actually it's playable. I mean, if you're playing against Magnus Carlsen or somebody of this level, maybe has this position, or Fabiano Caruana has this position analyzed till move 40, but I suppose you're playing on slightly different level, and then of course this knowledge is already enough to play this position. I mean, very rich, complicated position. So rook b8 is perfectly playable, but also bishop b7 I think is also playable. So now bishop g2 is the main move. Quite interesting is king b1 also. The idea is that now if white retreats with the bishop, let's say bishop e1, trying to push h4 g5, then immediately black plays g5. And actually here, because black needs to stop first before organizing his play on the queen side, needs to stop this advance of the pawns, and here black is doing very well. Very typical, if g5, e5, and then another knight b3 and h5. Not necessary, but it's good h5, just that you don't let him h4, and after gh you just have a strategically sound position. You continue playing your moves, your rook c8 or something. It's complicated, but again, I would rather be black here. So king b1, then rook c8. Again, the same idea, if bishop e1, g5. So now Anish Giri played once against Grishuk, rook g1. I think it was rapid chess. Grishuk probably was not sure about his memory, his analysis. He went g6, but this is a dubious move. I'm not sure it's good enough. Of course, the most principle here is g5, takes, and now queen b6. And this position also, I looked at it, black wants rook c3, very complicated, but in general, black has enough resources. I think even, and especially in a practical game, it's easier to play with black, I believe. So that's why bishop b7, bishop g2 is the main move. And now black has several ways of playing. Let's say g5, probably not enough here because takes knight h7, e5 is strong. Otherwise knight h7 would have been strong, but e5 is giving white a big advantage. So you have to take knight e5. This was, by the way, played by Vashila Graf once. Well, only thing it was in blitz, but actually white just protects the pawn like h3. Black has quite good counterplay. Rook c8 and so on. I mean, rook g8 maybe also first. Quite good compensation, but I think h4 is a strong move. And here it's not too bad for black, but probably not enough to equalize. So probably g5 is not good enough, but rook c8 is a serious move. Now white usually plays bishop e1, and again, this position, well, you can analyze. Black sometimes goes knight b6, knight gets to c4, very, very complicated position, but not easy. I mean, engines are in general giving some small plus for white. I mean, but again, it's so complicated that it doesn't matter so much. And position is very rich. But if black wants, there is a quite solid move, queen c4. A little bit strange, but solid move. And actually, white has nothing better than to take on c4 and play h3. And this endgame, same story. You know, modern engines are given 0.3 for white or something. Let's say the game can proceed like this. Knight c5, rook e1. So white wants to push f5. And then if e5, then slowly knight goes back and then trying to maneuver the knights to d5. So here it's more a positional play. And white, if has something, then not too much anyway, for sure. For instance, rook c8, f5, rook c7. Don't ask me why rook c7, but probably just in case to protect this bishop, in case sometimes e5 might come. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit better for white, but yeah, it's nothing so special, perfectly playable for black. So in my opinion, actually both lines, bishop e7 and knight bd7, are doing quite okay. You need to know, now you know how exactly to play it, all those nuances and move orders. Knight bd7 is, okay, gives white two setups, because bishop e7 is almost forcing white to play queen f3. But the main line is more dangerous maybe than here. Here there are two ways of playing after knight bd7, queen f3 and queen e2. But it seems to me that both are leading to, well, queen f3 more or less by force. But queen e2 is just a very rich, complicated position which you can analyze and play with both colors. Very interesting, exciting game will be played most probably in this line. So talking about bishop g5, I would say objectively it's not that dangerous as you see, because I believe that queen b6, first e6, queen b6 is objectively enough for a draw. And then you have also e6, bishop e7 line and e6, knight bd7 line. I think probably all three lines are holdable. But from other point of view, you see how narrow is black's path. And of course, that's why if you study this bishop g5 on a certain level, with all this knowledge, it can be a very, very dangerous weapon for white. I mean, against players who are maybe not grandmasters. Yeah, if you are playing on club level or amateur level, this is a very dangerous weapon, because not so many people have so much knowledge. Not every person on the planet, unfortunately, will buy this course. So you will have probably much more knowledge than your opponent, and then you can really crush, you know, with white very, very quickly your opponent. Just one wrong move order for black, as you see, and then just black is getting crushed. But with black, yeah, your choice. By the way, is also the fourth system, which is maybe a little dubious, but not refuted at all, which is knight bd7, if you remember, which I started this lesson with. So black has a choice. I mean, it's not a drama, bishop g5 system for black. And now I think I gave you the most important information about this, well, very, very challenging system. And then at last, but by far not least, we are going to check the systems with bishop e3 and f3 or f3, because very often it leads to transposition, especially in e5 lines, e3, bishop f3. I will pack it in one lesson because there are lots of transposition. And this is probably the most popular and maybe the most dangerous line. Also requires lots of knowledge, but also, in my opinion, black has some ways to face it, and you will not, after listening to this lesson, you will choose, if you are playing black, you will choose what you want to play against bishop e3, and you can start playing Najdorf from tomorrow on.